It's Chuck Cooperstein, the longtime radio voice of the Dallas Mavericks, who's been behind the mic for 3 NBA Finals. That and at the college level for Texas, Texas A&M, TCU, and SMU. Chuck is a graduate of the University of Florida.
Go Gators.
To my immediate right is Mike Tirico. Mike Tirico is the lead voice on some of NBC's biggest sporting events: Sunday Night Football, the Olympics, the Kentucky Derby, Major Championship Golf, just to name a few. Prior to his arrival at NBC, Mike spent 25 years at ESPN and ABC, served as a SportsCenter anchor and reporter, as well as a play-by-play voice on numerous sports. Got his start in television at WTVH in Syracuse, New York, where he attended and graduated from Syracuse University. Mike was the 2010 NSMA National Sportscaster of the Year, and tonight will be inducted into the NSMA Hall of Fame.
Go Orange. It means more. Jeez. Right? Come on.
Don't tell Boeheim that.
Greensboro's favorite, Coach Boeheim. Yeah.
So this panel is Ask the Pros, and we want to spend most of the hour letting you do just that, being able to ask questions to Mike and Chuck. But one to get started here from me. We've talked a lot about the capital J journalism over the last few summit panels. And Mike, at its core, game broadcasts and journalism are a natural intersection, aren't they?
They used to be, they should be, and it's harder to do it. And Chuck and I were just discussing that. And as you mentioned that, like, my roots in starting this were in a shop at the time at ESPN where reporting, facts, and journalism mattered so much. And only there, comparative to the early 90s to now, is a parallel to what we've seen through the whole industry. That journalism used to be an essential part and a demanded part of your broadcast. And now you've got to be really careful not to annoy your partners. I think of that immediately because somebody who's being honored tonight for his play-by-play work, TV work in the state of Massachusetts, and one of my good friends, Jack Edwards, is back there. And Jack is somebody, we lived through, the days where we were reporting on steroids and hard stuff on SportsCenter, and then we both evolved to being play-by-play guys, and they're like, well, we got to be careful how we word this because the team, the league, the conference, and it's really become one of the most difficult things. And I just spin this to Chuck because you've been at the intersection of this. Look, the Mavericks deserved a lot of criticism at the moment of the Luka trade. Well, Chuck's talking to Mavs fans every night who are screaming on the radio about it, but then Chuck's got to call the game and walk a fine line. It's a big challenge that any of you who are calling games are going to come across, or hosting studio shows will come across. How did you handle it?
Yeah,
what do you think?
It's interesting though that the leagues have exerted so much influence now. We're back in the 90s, and they really did. They really kind of let the partners do their thing. And I think as they have paid more money to the partners, that has become a huge part of this. But the night of the trade, it happened at midnight. And I was on the phone with my wife and basically trying to avoid the buzzing that was on my phone and trying to play the good husband. And it only lasted about 10 minutes. And I pulled the phone away, saw the alert, and said, I got to call you back. And about 90 minutes later, I did call her back, but I was up until 4:30 in the morning. And the Mavericks were playing a 3:30 game that Sunday afternoon.
In LA?
No, in Cleveland.
In Cleveland.
We were in Cleveland. But in fact, my partner, Brian Damaris, is here in the back here. We stated the obvious. I mean, we know you are hurting today. We know you are stunned today. We're stunned. But ultimately, and especially on radio, we can't do a talk show on radio.
Right.
It's our job ultimately to tell you where the ball is on the floor, who took the shot, who made the shot. And the Mavericks are down by 40 because they're not playing anybody. But But really, once the game starts, and you're talking about this, you're establishing it. But once the game starts, the game's the game, and you've got to be able to do that. I mean, mean, and certainly working for the team. I mean, we're walking that line of not, no matter how disappointed we might be personally, and I'll admit I'm still disappointed, but because I love watching that guy play basketball. But at the same time, you're speaking to Mavericks fans, and you are basically telling them what is happening with your team.
Here's the hard line. Chuck, how many years with the Mavs now?
21.
Chuck, for 21 years, has built up equity as the voice of the Mavs. He probably has a longer rope of what he can say because of the relationships and the connections than somebody who's in year 2 or 3. Now that I've covered the NFL for the last 30 years, and this will be, I don't know, year 15 or 14 as a lead play-by-play guy of either Monday or Sunday Night Football, I probably have more leash to say something about the league that's negative than I would have in year 1 or 2. So for a lot of the younger people in the room, or whenever we move someplace, new relationships, you've got to be able to read the room and understand, but still stay true to telling the truth and remember who your audience is. Because as you said, hey, Mavs fans, I know you're hurting, we're hurting. That connects directly with the audience. We work for 2 different groups of people when we put on headsets and call a game. We work for the company/team that's employing us, but we also work for the fans. We are the conduits to the coaches, the GMs, the athletes, the opposing coaches, all that stuff. And so we have a responsibility, because once we start BSing the fans, then you start to lose credibility. So it's a really careful line, and there's no exact answer, but I think there is a place for journalism, who, what, where, when, why, and how, in every broadcast you do. As Chuck said, when the ball's moving, that's not the case. But beforehand, and maybe at a lull in the game, or when you appear on a talk show, how many stations around the country called after the trade, let's get Chuck Cooperstein on. We've known Chuck forever. He's the best guy. And like, well, Chuck, what do you think? And you're like, you got to take a deep breath. So it's a hard one.
Well, and I will say, like, in the first day, like, there were a bunch of people like that Sunday, who called and asked, and I can't do it. I can't do it. I've got to be able to process this myself. And I think I probably didn't start doing anything until probably the week, because we were in the midst of a 5-game road trip at that time too. So I probably didn't do anything until like that Tuesday. It should never take that long. But it did take that long.
But that's wise, because instead of saying the wrong thing,
because I probably would have.
Yeah. So you don't always have to put your hand up and say, yeah, sure, I'll talk. Sometimes it's not the right moment, and that's with every situation. So you just try to process it as much as you can. I'm sorry we went on with that, but I wanted to hear it from Chuck. So that was my ask the pros question to Chuck.
Even Mike Tirico is going to ask the pros.
It's all right.
All right, time to open it up to the floor for questions. I'll call on folks. I will try to do my best to repeat the question for those on the stream to make sure that if you're watching on the stream, you know what question is being asked. Let's get started. Far left side in the middle.
I want to ask both of y'all, with your established careers and being one of the best voices that you hear today, a lot of us in the room that are younger are very scared about what could be a future for us. I want y'all to take us back to about your first jobs and how you got your big break, which ultimately led y'all to where you are today.
Well, my first job really was in college, and I think both of us were really, really fortunate to work at places that had tremendous opportunity. At Florida, we were a fully commercial operation. We had a full-time general manager, full-time ops, full-time music, full-time news director.
College radio station.
Yeah, college radio station. Yeah. Owned by the college, but it was fully commercial.
Right.
And so anything you wanted to learn about the business, you could learn, and it was just a remarkable lab. So I got to do a lot of baseball, and I did women's basketball. I always thought I was going to be a baseball guy. I thought I was going to be the voice of the Mets. I mean, that was my dream as a kid. And then I realized once I got into this business, there was absolutely no way that was going to happen. It's just for the nature of what I do and how I do. But the biggest break I got is when I moved to Dallas, and I worked at KRLD Radio, and we had the rights to TCU football and basketball. And so I was there. We were at the station. The station had the rights. And so I did color on football. And then I did play-by-play for basketball, and it really went from there.
I went to Syracuse. I don't know if you've heard, they've turned out a sportscaster or two. And if you haven't heard, we'll be happy to tell you about it. We got to laugh at ourselves because you guys say it behind our backs, so we might as well just take the arrows. And Marv Albert, Bob Costas, Dick Stockton, Len Berman, Marty Glickman, the kind of godfather of all of that, all went to Syracuse. I grew up in New York, wanted to do the same thing. And in 1984, got up there, started writing for the student newspaper, the Daily Orange, covered field hockey. When we had field hockey on during the Olympics, people were like, how do you know about obstruction in field hockey? Like, dude, that was my beat as a freshman, man. I am dialed into obstruction. I know what that hand signal still is. Don't understand the rules still, but I decided to do radio instead. Dan Hoare, the voice of the Cincinnati Bengals, still a great friend of mine, was a senior. I was a freshman. Dan helped show me the basics of starting out in college radio, worked at a college radio station like Chuck that was a university-owned NPR station, but the sports department had a legacy in broadcast, and got a chance to do sportscast and host pre- and post-game shows, and then finally got to call my first game at Lane Stadium, Syracuse against Virginia Tech. It was before they played Enter Sandman. There were Virginia Tech games before that. Instead of Enter Sandman, you could see cows when you looked out the left end zone at Old Lane Stadium. They were more like the two big bleachers, and that was it. And that was in 1986, and that started this stupid journey. And for those of you who are starting the journey, here's the problem. There is no roadmap. For doctors, for lawyers, for many other professions, there's a direct roadmap of school, test, take your boards, do your residency, and go. Every person who's honored as a sports writer, sportscaster of the year, and everyone who was nominated has a completely different path to how they arrived at their nomination or their award this year. So just be available, have your eyes open, and be willing to try stuff and do different things. I never thought my field hockey beat writing in 1984 would pay off some 40 years later at 1 a.m. in Paris, but it did, right? And I'm so glad I had that somewhere in the back of my head. So instead of trying to study everybody else's roadmap, listen to them, learn from them, and
Follow yours.
yeah, like the old baseball ready position, like, on your balls or your feet, even weight each way so you can go wherever the ball is. You just got to be like that with the industry. So thanks for asking.
Penalty corners, they'll stick with you.
Penalty corners do stick with you, man.
Dominic in the back.
You guys had like one game on your career, and you had to call something you never called before. What event? What would you want to call?
He can't answer that because he's pretty much done
No,
everything.
we didn't let you repeat the question. I'm sorry.
Yes, the question was
the one event that you had.
Yep. One event left in your career. What would it be to call?
For me, it'd be the Masters. I want to be on the 15th hole of the Masters.
15. Wow.
Cool.
I love it.
Now, was better before they put in all the trees. There's a,
Now, would you say that?
huh?
Would you say that on the Masters broadcast?
There you go. I'd be going the way of Gary McCord and all those guys.
I love these trees here at 15.
They just made the whole so much more difficult.
Exactly.
But I got a chance to go to the Masters for the first time in 2019 when Tiger won, and everything you see about the Masters on television, as well as CBS covers it, and even better now with all the drone shots they've used the last few years to give you different angles that you never got before. It's TV just does not do it justice. It's the greatest sporting event anywhere. Any people, any sports facility operators need to spend time at the Masters and see how they do it, because there is nothing that they miss. And just being a part of all that and loving golf as much as I've loved golf from the time I was a little kid, that's it, man. That would be the one. I can retire after that.
For me, it's baseball. I've never called a big league baseball game. I've never done baseball, and I would love to do it. I think playoff baseball to call is such a fight for a play-by-play announcer, because the words have to be minimal but impactful. And that's where I thought Joe Buck was as good as anybody. And Joe Davis is doing an amazing job doing it now. And he's followed a legend and he's doing a great job. It's so difficult to sit there and not say what's on your mind, and that internal fight of, is this important enough? Is this additive? In the other sports, the ball's moving, the puck's moving, you're keeping with it. You know when to lay out. There's a cadence and a rhythm to it, right? But sometimes that drama of when you can be in concert with a director who is just taking the right shots of building tension, boom, 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 quicker cuts, fan, manager, batter, pitcher, catcher. Sometimes all your words do is screw that up. And so do you know that the director's ready to crush it for the next 10 seconds and you can be out of the way? I think that's a great challenge. And I would love at some point in my life to just, do any middle of the season baseball game, but playoff baseball, I think, is one of those special ones. So some point, if not, I'll just sit there in my house and call a game for myself and do it as we all do from the couch. We've never called a bad game from our couch, right? Not one of us. We've always said the right words and never stumbled either.
Let's see. Let's go down in front right here.
Kind of switching gears, Chuck, this question may be better suited for you since Mike, you're more of a national guy, but a lot of us in here are looking, whether that may be with a network or with a specific school or team. If you're working for a school or a team, how Homer is to Homer in a broadcast as someone who's kind of doing a lot of work for smaller schools or stuff like that?
I grew up in New York. Mike grew up in New York.
Yeah.
We're not that far apart in age. Yeah. We grew up listening to Marv. Marv to me is the standard bearer of being excited, passionate, committed, accurate, all those things. But when you listen to Marv do the Knicks or the Rangers or the Giants, there was never a doubt that in the course of the broadcast, because it is a local broadcast, that you're talking to your fans. You want those guys to win. And the other great line came from the man who hired me in Dallas, Brad Sham, with the voice of the Cowboys, now in 45 years as the voice of the Cowboys. Awesome. He said, you do an objective broadcast from your blank team's point of view. So, like in the NBA, the Washington Wizards may be awful, okay? And they are awful. But they're not the Harlem Globetrotters out there, okay? They're real live NBA players. So you treat them with respect. You treat the game with respect. And so that's, to me, that's how I've always looked at it. The prep for the Mavs pretty much takes care of itself, once we're in the season. It doesn't take long to do. But it takes a little longer, especially with teams that you don't see on TV very much. Yeah. Whether it's Charlotte or Washington or Utah or somebody like that, that you want to study a little more, know a little bit more about them, so that you can tell a story about them. Like, Colin Sexton's now in Charlotte. Okay, if Colin Sexton goes off, you want to be able to. Why is he doing this? And is there a history against the Mavericks? Which there is. And so I'm able to do something like that. But there's never a doubt. Where my loyalties are and what that broadcast is going to sound like.
Know your personnel is the line that is often said by GMs, front office types, managers. You got to know your listeners, right? You want to have joy when the moments happen. And for the younger folks in here who haven't, you need to just go on YouTube or Google and put in Larry Munson.
The greatest.
The longtime voice of Georgia football. And you talk about unnamed and unidentified players on the opposing team. And we hit them. Who? Didn't matter. We hit them and we knocked them down, and they're gonna throw, and we got them. Who? The quarterback, the running back. But like you listen and you smile and you laugh. Larry was all in. He was dogs.
See, he was the only. He was, and as a Gator, okay, we hate Georgia. Okay, but I loved Larry Munson.
Right.
I always tell. So I did a game at Auburn. It was Tennessee and Auburn. And I'm with Jim Wacker, the former coach of TCU in Minnesota, and we're driving back to Atlanta after the game, and we get on WSB, blowing through the Southeast, And I said, Wacker, you've been with me, you've known me 15 years, and you know how I do games. Here's Larry Munson. Now you're gonna listen to him, and they're playing LSU and Quincy Carter's at Georgia at the time. And it's like we're driving it down the field on them, and they're driving it down the field on us. And you got to hunker down, you hairy dogs, hunker down. It's just
it worked. It worked for him. It's hard because you're trying to get a job and be a homer. I still think you have a responsibility to document the game, inform the audience, and be honest with them in terms of what's happening. I think that shows, especially as you get established in your preparation for the other team. Because then your fan base trusts you to tell you, hey, this is one of the young stars in the NHL. This guy is a rising star. This player, she is going to be one of the next WNBA stars. Your prep should be able to inform your audience about the other team. But if you know your audience is just your fan base, you're going to tailor the game to them. Hopefully, you can call the exciting moments with excitement and not fandom, and not have your analyst scream over the top of you like he's a cheerleader or she's a cheerleader on the sideline, right? So that you can describe the play and still be heard.
And frankly, that's happening a lot.
Yeah, it is.
And especially in the NFL. I mean, I noticed this on NFL radio, driving around, listening to Sirius on Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
It's not good.
Remember, okay? It's radio. People need to hear what's happening during the game. But know your audience is the big one. Homerism is part of it, but do a great job too. Like there's nothing worse than hearing, and here's the pitch, and it's strike three. They've got a no-hitter, and we'll be back with the totals after this. So document history with the appropriate enthusiasm. Don't expect you to be over the top, but do the job.
Everett in the back.
Yeah, Mike, this one for you. You're on Sunday Night Football, so you're in Philly on Sunday, but you were probably in X place on Wednesday, and then in X place on Thursday. As someone who does multiple sports, your prep work, just take us through your preparation process when you're doing an NBA game and then a football game, or you're going to these kind of events, but you have a game coming up the next day. How do you deal with your time management, your family, all the other stuff that goes into your prep so you can be the expert that you are on Sunday nights or on game days?
It's certainly understanding family to support you. And I think any of us who've been in the business for a while and have spouses, partners, kids, parents, I think everybody has understood the call of, hey, I've got a game. I'm sorry I can't be there, right? And we've attended, my attendance is a record low for family events, right? And you just feel bad. You feel bad about that, but everybody does understand life, and especially in this profession, does become a series of trade-offs, and you try to manage that as best you can. The preparation, where the games are. You know what games you're going to be doing, unless it's a tournament and somebody's going to get knocked out. You don't know the opponents, but for the most part, I know that I've got to be ready for Lions Chargers preseason on July 31st. So in your mind, you're just back timing it. Okay, when do I have to be done with this and this and this? And when the events start to overlap, Ian Eagle can tell you, Ian does it. So many people do it with different sports that Wes Derby sitting right next to. That October, November, it's holidays, it's family, it's basketball, and it's football. And of course, there are like 3 or 4 other things that pop up along the way. When you get the time, you've got to do it. And sometimes that's 4 a.m. I'd say my best prep work gets done 4 to 6 without email open. And just the stuff in front of you and your coffee and your dog, right? And just like it's peace and quiet, and I can crank out 2 hours. I think one thing that we're all in this business, I don't know what Wes or Jack or Chuck think, people who've done it for a while. I think one of the hardest things right now is trying to figure out what not to look at, because there's so much. You can so over-prepare. On Sunday morning, Saturday night or Sunday morning for a Sunday night football game, I just try to push away from the table, because there's not one more Pro Football Focus stat or one more podcast nugget that I need. Now, invariably, you go grab 5 or 6 of them right before the game on the field, and those are top of mind, and you blurt them out on the air. You're like, Where's that in my notes? I just heard it on the way upstairs from somebody. Those are the decisions that you have to make, and they get more challenging. But you got to budget your time. The coach is always ready at 1:01 p.m. Eastern time to call the first play after the kickoff, and his team gets the ball after the proverbial touchback. He's ready to go, and so you know the same thing. Prep time is essential. You just got to find it.
Spencer in the front.
So, Mike, we unfortunately lost our colleague Greg Gumbel this year. He passed away earlier, and he made history as the first African Black person to call the Super Bowl on television. And to my knowledge, he's the last one to do that. So, and I know that you purposely made the move to NBC because you knew Al Michaels was probably stepping there for his contract. So, what does it mean to you to kind of succeed in following his footsteps, now be calling the Super Bowl on NBC?
I mean, it's appreciated just to be able to do the Super Bowl. The other things that come with it, I think I'm the oldest person, I will be, health willing, the oldest person to do their first Super Bowl also. Like somebody said that to me, I said, I don't know who figured that out, but man, that was a wasted 5 minutes of your life. Well, thank you. I appreciate that, right? It's good to be the oldest doing something for once in my life. Yeah, all of the things that come with that are really cool and neat. It's a dream of many of us. 12 people have done it, I believe, all time. And to get the opportunity to do that at the end of the season, it's overwhelming in a lot of ways. It is something that I probably have thought about every day since Kevin and Tom got done doing the Super Bowl last year. Like at some fleeting second during the day, it's this thought on the Super Bowl or that. Like, do I need to go back and watch all 57, 58, 59 of them? No. You just, at the end of the day, the game's going to be right in front of you. And if you treat it extra special, you're probably going to screw it up. So just kind of, you've done 300 some odd football games. I think you've figured out the way to do it. Try to keep it as simple and planned as possible. But that's one of the many parts of the uniqueness of getting a call a Super Bowl that is that's a bit overwhelming, to be honest. And I'm honored to be a part of whatever the list is. 2 people, 13 people, oldest person to do their first. Gonna be on that list by myself. Whatever it is. Thank you.
Done 2 straight on this side, so let's go to the left side of the room. Let's go right there in the middle left. Yeah.
I know both of you guys probably know this, halfway. 2 days before the game starts, asking. So how do you guys do it? Having very little time.
Chuck?
Well, I mean, in the NBA, we have back-to-backs, and we play basically 13, 14 back-to-backs. The key is to try to work ahead as much as you possibly can, especially, on our opponent. Praying that our opponent isn't playing the same night that we are, and that's happened, and that happens, and then all hell's breaking loose. Mike says working at 4:00 in the morning. Literally, I'm probably going back home and starting, and starting right then, and try, because I like to sleep in the morning. So I'll get back at 11, and I might work until 2 in the morning to get that done. But really, the key is to try to work ahead, because again, I know my team. I'm doing the work that I've always done. I know how long that generally takes, but I may not know the team that we're playing as well, and so that's going to take a little more time. But if you can get ahead of everything, and there are times when the game after we're playing that back-to-back game, and that team hasn't played. Oh, I'm going to go work on them too. It's because otherwise you just get caught up in it, and you don't want to get caught up in it.
But West Durham's done this a bunch. Does it 11, probably 12 weeks in a row where you go Sunday, Saturday, right? You've got the Falcons on Sunday, but a college game before on Saturday, and that game may not be set until like Monday morning or Sunday night, right? So he's doing Falcons games, so when you get the game assignment, you can't get started. Sometimes I always used to go backwards. Like, let me get that last one done and put over there in the fridge and let it just kind of sit at a cool temperature. It's not going to spoil. And I'll come back to that late and then work up to the next one. You kind of figure out those ways sometimes to manage your schedule. You hope for double teams. I had a wild card back-to-back Saturday and Sunday 3 years ago. And Miami, Kansas City ended up being our Saturday game. And we, on Sunday Night Football, because of the timing, get to announce where the wildcard games are, which networks have those games. So we usually get it in a commercial break and then announce it the next one. And I'm like, do we know yet? Do we know yet? Because I just want to know how miserable is my week going to be? Like, are you going to give me 3 teams I haven't had all year, right? And like, Miami, Kansas City is the first. Like, thank God, I'm safe here. Repeat customers are fun late in the year, you're not starting from scratch. So you manage. It's like everything else. I mean, you got 7 things to do in your day. You figure out a way to get them done. The only reason that you do the odd hours or figure out how to come up with a plan is because you want to be comfortable. And if we leave you with anything in the preparation space, it's that our comfort comes from our preparation. And hopefully our best podcast comes from being comfortable, just like exams, right? If you know you're ready for a test, bring it. Let's go. If you're scrambling and cramming, you're like panicked for question 19. You're like, oh my God, I did look at that once. I kind of forget, right? You just want to have that comfort. And when you are fully prepared for a game, then it can unfold in front of you and you can see what's happening and not chase the game. Every woman or man in this room who has covered a game and called a game knows full well when you have command of the game and it's in front of you and you can see what's playing out because you've kind of studied, prepared, and almost played it out in your mind, listened to your analysts, talked to the coaches, all that. When you're just trying to figure out what's going on, and like, wait, who's that tight end again? It's the most uncomfortable feeling you can have with an open mic in front of you. So that's why the panic of preparation pays off in the comfort of calling it.
Let's go second row here and pick.
I'm Maggie Davis from Washington, Kentucky, and a lot of times when I'm calling games, I'm with different people every single time, like different color person, different producers, different sideline. Obviously, you all work with so many people over the course of your career. Any advice in terms of building chemistry? Building chemistry if you're working with people more?
Go to lunch
If you can.
if you can.
That
I mean,
absolutely.
It's really helpful. I mean, you get a sense of how not only how they think but how they talk, is so that they know, like, if you lay out and you give them a second, they can pop in, and that's and I've always tried to tell my color people, here's when I want it back. In basketball, basically at the top of the arc, I want it at the 3-point line. I want it back. In football, if they break the huddle, I want it back. You make your points that way. I mean, you need to tell them, what you need, but also at the same time, kind of understand their personality and how that works.
Yeah, Chuck's right. Anything from driving to the venue together to if they're coming from somewhere and it's last minute, like I'm sure a lot of the stuff you do, Maggie, it's just, hey, let's just grab a water or a cup of coffee in the back by the press room or in this empty stands. You just spend 5 minutes of talking about it, even if it's just like, hey, who'd you play against? Where did you play? Where do you live? How many kids you guys have? Whatever it is, just so there's some comfort there. Hopefully, if it's somebody you haven't worked with, you get a chance to hear them do another game. I mean, games out there somewhere online. Very helpful to hear how they think, how they react, right? And then you can be theoretically, we're the professionals. We're the ones who should be able to adapt.
I like that theoretically.
To the analyst for whom being on the air might be their second, third job that they're good at in life, right? So we have to make them. We have to elevate them, screw them up, make them better. A lot of times, sitting next to them, hand on the shoulders, like, hey, hand signals, those are fine. People don't see them, but they do hear clear communication. Jack and I were blessed in the 90s. We'd work with, any one of 12 people on SportsCenter in a month, right? And you just kind of learn. That was the best training ground ever because put anybody next to me. I can figure it out, right? I sat with Chris Berman, and I sat next to Jack, and I sat next to guy named Jim Bergamo, who many of you probably never heard of, but that's what I did one of my first SportsCenter with. Like, we all figured it out, and it just gives you that mindset of I can adapt to everybody I work with by the things Chuck talked about. A meal, listen, catch a sneak peek of what their work is, and just make them feel comfortable. How can I help you? And that will go a long way to a broadcast that sounds like you've been doing this for a long time, whether it's a game or a studio situation as well. Great question, Maggie.
Let's go to Nick in the back.
I'm curious, how much time do you guys spend taking things like your about not rabbit holing, trying to say, are there times you go back and say, you know what, I have 7 games in a row, I don't need to keep looking up next back or whatever. Like, how much time do both of you spend kind of getting rid of it?
Not enough. The next question for those online was, how often do you clean out your charts and get rid of stuff that you don't use? Because if you go 7 games without using it, guaranteed to happen though in the 8th game. And you're like, wait, I had that right here. What did I do with it, right? Yeah, I try, actually, it's July tomorrow. Start of July, I try to look at my football chart and clean it up. And just go to the last playoff game that I did, or the last regular season game I did, and just now that you're months away and go, what is that? What does that mean? Why'd you put so? I do a lot of shorthand on my charts. You know that if I had to hand my charts over to somebody, they're not useless, but they won't understand +5/6 parentheses 20 is, right? It looks like an algebra problem, but that would be 5 straight and 6 of the last 7. They've scored 20 points in the game. Right? That's just my shorthand. Chuck has his, Jack has his, Wes has his, and you just kind of develop that. So not enough time personally is spent cleaning out and getting rid of stuff. But it's a good idea in this age of WHIP and OPS and everything. And we are over analytic in sports for our listeners and viewers. And we just have to be really careful that we don't put too much of that on the chart, because if it gets on the chart, somewhere in your mind you're thinking, I'm going to get this on the air because it's really cool. Maybe not.
I'm so old school. I've seen Mike's charts and whatever, but I handwrite everything and still do it. I've never found anything that I'm really comfortable with on the computer. I like to say, technology is undefeated against me. But so to your point, if I'm doing a game and I haven't done, and I keep writing this note, 3 or 4 games and I haven't done it, but I'll just look at it and then just not write it and just and go individually through the game. I won't because I don't have just a database that's carrying me through on a computer. I don't do that. I'll just go back through my books, which I have every scorebook I've had for the last 20 years that I've done the Mavericks.
Cool. So cool.
And figure out, okay, what I want to talk to, especially with like the opponents, even more so than the Mavericks. It's like, okay, what did I talk about this guy last year? What did I say about him? And I might have written the same thing like 3 or 4 times. And okay, well, we've done that. Okay, we don't need to reiterate that anymore. So just a little different, just very, very old school.
You've inspired me to go clean up my charts now. So I'm calling your ass at 6 in the morning tomorrow. We will try to make quick answers so we get to as many as possible.
Aisle in the black, way back.
On air, that's what I'm having. Being on air is my biggest fear. I think I was scared of stuttering or messing up. How did you deal with those nerves in the beginning? What would you do if you did mess up?
Okay. To me, I always try to believe I'm talking to one person. I'm talking to you right now. I can't think of the fact that there might be, 100,000 people that are listening to me. I mean, I won't allow that to happen, because ultimately, when I'm doing the game, I am talking to you. I mean, there may be others, in their own way, but ultimately, I'm talking to you. I'm telling you what's happening, and I'm giving you this information. And I think if you just talk to your friends, you don't stumble, right? I mean, you're comfortable talking to your friends. And I think that's the way you really have to approach it. Don't make the moment any bigger than it is, because ultimately it's really not.
It's great advice. I'd say the more comfortable you are with what you're talking about, the less apprehensive you are. And I think you have an advantage that we didn't. You've got your iPhone. Set your iPhone up in front of you and record yourself over and over. Oh, just talk to the phone, talk to the iPhone. Sit there, buy the little $4 stand, just talk, or your computer, and just talk right into it like it's a camera. Because if you look at that camera, it looks the same thing like you'll see on your phone. And just talk into it, record it, go back and watch it. Get used to watching it. Get comfortable hearing your own voice, and just repetition, repetition. And I guarantee you, in 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, you will not even think twice about getting in front of the camera. I don't even see the camera when we're doing games now. You know, I don't even, for 1 second do I think there are 24 million people watching this. It's like Collinsworth and just like, what are you gonna say? And let's figure this out. And you want me to do it this way? So you'll get comfortable with it. Use that camera. Your roommates may think you're crazy, but that's okay. When you get them tickets to a game in a couple of years, they'll love you.
Let's go right in the front here.
Real quick, I think something that you both do very well is you have a lot of professionalism when you all call games, but you also treat it as a fan. That you're commenting from the couch, as you said before. So us being an entry level, how do you all attempt to balance speaking as a fan, but also speaking as a professional?
I mean, for me, the fandom goes away once the headsets go on. You know, I mean, I don't know, Mike, when you did a Syracuse game, you know, what that was.
Oh, I was much harsher on them. I killed them just on purpose.
So for me,
so nobody thought
so
I
for
was.
me, like the first time, you know, I did a game at Florida Field, like that was a pretty big deal for me. It's like I had to kind of keep it together. And the first time I did a Florida Georgia game, it's like that was completely over. Like, you really need to get your shit together here. I mean, this is, but ultimately that's what it is. Ultimately, it's the job. And you know, the great thing about what we do is that we are fans, and that our natural enthusiasm for what we're watching is hopefully translated to you, but not to the extent of where we're blowing it all out because, you know, hey, you know, I want Florida to win, or I want the Mavericks to win, or anything like that. It's just you just know that once the headsets go on, your professionalism has to take over.
Perfectly said. And we all love sports, but the outcome of a game usually never impacts any fan's life. Like, they sleep in the same bed. They eat the same thing for breakfast, unless they've really emptied out their DraftKings account, right? Like, the result of the game, while important and impactful, and thank goodness it is, it really doesn't change the lives of the fans, right? The athletes, the coaches, the GMs, it affects those individuals. You've got to remember that as an announcer. You have a job to do. Do your job to the absolute best of your ability. Enjoy the environment. Soak up the environment. I like going. We still have season tickets to the Detroit Tigers. We live in Michigan. Had tickets for 25 years. I like going to the game, getting a beer, and like yelling at the umpire. I like being a fan because I like being able to know the audiences. I love the misery of waiting in line to go through the scanner to go into the ballpark and then go. Are we going to leave in the ninth inning to beat the traffic out of the parking garage, or are we going to get stuck here for an hour? Like, I still like being a fan, so I feel like that's my association with the person at home who is watching. But you've got a job to do. Do your job. Document I live by document, inform, entertain. Document the broadcast. Inform your audience. When the game stinks, you've got to be a little bit entertaining and keep them listening or watching. And if you do those three things, then you're doing your job. And your fandom and joy for the game can be right in the middle of all of that. Appreciate the athletes. Appreciate what they're doing. Hopefully at that point, somebody's paying you to come watch sports and talk about it to thousands of people. That's freaking cool. That is not paving a road out here in the sun. That is not building a hospital. That is not saving a life. Like, that's the coolest freaking job out there. So enjoy where you are and do your job. Thank you.
Dominic in the middle back.
obviously have their personality, you have to more change their personality than you yours.
I always try to. John Gruden's very different from Chris Collinsworth, very different from Tony Kornheiser, right? You try to make them all work. And like I said, hopefully you've got more pitches in your arsenal or more clubs in your bag. The analyst is the star. Like there are a couple hundred people you can throw in the booth and they can make the show okay. The analyst elevates a broadcast to me.
And that's the difference between
TV and radio. Exactly
Because
right.
radio, we're
It's play-by-play.
it's a play-by-play medium.
Yeah.
I mean, I want my analyst, and I'm lucky I have a fabulous analyst who really understands our team,
Right.
and understands the game, what we're trying to do, right. and I want him in there as much as possible. But he also knows that we're the eyes, so that we have to call it for lack of a better phrase, you're a caption writer.
Exactly.
Right. I mean, it's just because you've got the scorebook, you've got the picture, you can tell the stories. Off of that.
In TV, you're with the producer, and the producer's running air traffic control, and you're piloting the plane, and you're just trying to make sure that you get the best out of the person next to you. And we go back to the very simple thing, start of every year. I do what, you do why, and that usually gets you through a good broadcast. So, how Greg Olson arrives at his why, how Tom Brady arrives at his why, how Troy, Chris, all very different ways, right? So, you get in the booth with one of those people, you adjust to them, because they're why, they've lived it. They can elevate a broadcast by telling you what happened or why something happened, be critical of it, all of that stuff. So you just adjust to them, make them comfortable, and don't make it too hard. When they're talking a lot, add less. There are moments that you need to tell a story in the game. You're just like, in break, hey Chris, I'm going to do a story on this guy here. So after the next play, I may take it and just tell the story of Chuck Cooperstein and his roots growing up and how he arrived here. And so if you don't mind just giving me that play so he doesn't jump into analysis of 2nd and 7. And he gets that. Chris gets that. So working with somebody, you hopefully can do that. And that's what makes it work.
Let's go back to this side. We'll do Dan in the middle there.
This question's for both of you. You talked about practice, a lot of talk about practice. Yeah. There's one buzzword when it comes to prep that we always hear, nuggets, and how important those are to use to weave into a broadcast. There's no better place to get those than your interactions with players and coaches. And nowadays, it feels like time windows are getting shorter and shorter to have those interactions. So I'm just curious, how do you maximize those types of interactions, given the small time? If there's any intel that you think really enhances your broadcast from those types of conversations?
Tremendous question.
Well, first off, I mean, we're operating on different planes.
Yeah. So
okay. Because Mike obviously, and I'll just talk from the NBA. Mike's going to be in the NBA this year. Before their games, they get a significant period of time, with the head coach.
Yes.
Basically 10 to 15 minutes, with the head coach. I'm lucky on the local side that I do a pregame with my head coach, basically about 5 minutes, but I do see him 80 times a year.
Right.
And then there might be the time when we get done and he says, we got something I want to bounce off you. That doesn't happen all that often, but it does happen. But it's harder, especially from the local side, because colleges and professional teams are protecting their players and their coaches almost at all costs. This was the worst thing that came out of COVID. Was that it used to be a lot different, and frankly, it used to be a lot better. But as Dan and Ken were up here before, saying, look, we can bitch and moan about it, but it's not going back to what it was. Right. So you just have to make the best of those and make sure that the questions that you ask of the coaches are ones that are really pertinent to what you're trying to do. And I think they will respect you for it. The players, at least the coaches are somewhat available. The players are. You need an act of Congress almost at this point to get players. Even for us, uh, for national television, it might be easier, but it's a lot harder. I mean, and your questions just have to be more on point. I think it's harder to develop that relationship that we used to have with players and coaches that we could do a lot more with them. So, I mean, the nuggets that you're talking about, a lot of times it does become more statistical, really, than it does personal, because that's what we have the access to that we didn't have before.
There's a great book, Who Moved My Cheese, right? The cheese has moved. To Chuck's point, our access to athletes is different. Many of the athletes have their own outlet in their social media. And so I follow a ton of like 22, 23-year-old Olympians. And like, I'll look at my feet sometimes and go, what am I following here for? However, when I do get a moment around them, I can reference back something like that. So you almost have to be a little more intentional on when I do get an opportunity, what can or will I ask to confirm a nugget that maybe I read somewhere. It is a lot harder. You nailed it. It's a problem. I think it's one of the problems that the NBA has had in telling the story of the players over the last few years. Michael Jordan used to walk into Chicago. NBC had the Bulls on every Sunday. Every Sunday. Michael Jordan used to walk in the stadium, valet, out of his car. He'd walk down the hall, make the turn in, sit down and do the interview with NBC on Sunday with Ahmad Rashad, usually. And that's where their great friendship struck up. But if Michael Jordan wasn't too big to talk to the national broadcasters before a national game, none of the guys who are out there right now should say no to that, but they almost all do. So it's become challenging at every, it's changed. So we just got to figure it out and build relationships. And when you get 30 seconds, understand when is the right time to ask the right question and get to the. I think everyone's a little more approachable in the social media age, right? So maybe if you can appeal to like, hey, I saw on your Instagram this. Oh, really? You follow me? Changes the tone of the conversation.
Pressure pack moment. Last question.
All
JP's hand went up first.
Yeah, it's a great question.
Great.
Yeah.
You always have to listen to yourself. I mean, but I don't listen like immediately back to every game because frankly, I have this I think most of us, but I know I do, have this ridiculous ability to remember every mistake I made during the game.
Accurate.
Every mistake. Yep. So I don't necessarily need to listen to that again to know that I messed up. But you do want to listen, maybe over a 2-week period, and listen to some games, and just to make sure that you haven't fallen into verbal traps. You're saying the same thing every time. And then, I have a good friend of mine, Bruce Gilbert, who was the folks at Cumulus and Westwood One.
Great.
And he's phenomenal, and I never worked for Bruce, but Bruce has always liked my work and trusted me and respected me, and I respect him. And I'll send him some stuff and say, hey, am I doing this right? Am I using my analyst enough? Am I messing up? And I know he'll shoot straight with me. And I think it's really important for everybody. You need to listen to yourself, but at the same time, if you can find some people, and especially here, whether it's it's Wes or it's the voice of Carolina or Wake or whoever, somebody that who really knows the business, that can listen to you and give you honest feedback. That's really a great resource to have.
Yeah, be your own harshest critic as well. It makes external criticism more comfortable. You may be able to dismiss external feedback as superfluous or inaccurate because you already know that I'm doing this and I like the way I'm doing this, and that's fine. JP, I watch back every game. Our cadence is a little different with Sunday night. Part of our deal is by noon on Monday, I have watched our game back and talked with our producer about the show, right? There's so many things going on that I want to make sure we put them to bed because by Monday at noon, the train's running to the next game for us. So 3 hours without commercials down to maybe 2 hours and 15 minutes. I can knock that out on the plane in the morning, going back home, and almost always do. And I pretty much, like Chuck said, know every place I've screwed up and want to get to the why of that and make a good mental note of that. If I find myself in a bad habit or mistakes I made, I'll refresh myself for that before the game on Friday and Saturday. And with the NBA, I'll go back and do it because I'm not doing the volume of games that Chuck is doing, so I'm different in that respect. We just went back and watched all 17 nights of the Olympics, daytime and primetime show, just the studio segments and the minute or so around them, just to understand, okay, did that work? Did that not work? And we're doing a group watch of that, as a matter of fact, to just know how can we be better and how can I be better? And I always tell our group, yeah, exactly. Sound the alarm. Sound the alarm when I screw up. I want everybody around us to tell me, hey, you're talking too much. Hey, you don't need that fact. Your stat conflicted with the graphic on the bottom of the screen. How can we avoid that? Like, I'm all for team feedback, and then I'll filter what's good or not. But as Chuck said, like, listen to your own stuff. Get comfortable with your voice and your face. If you want America to be, or your market to be comfortable with your voice and your face, let it start with you, right? And if you hear things that are like, that's kind of annoying, fix it. Work on it. Do drills. Call a game off TV, in front of your roommate and who'll think you're strange, whatever it is. But you can do all those things.
We all did that when we were 13 years old. I mean, that's how we all got started, right?
You can do all those things. You can call a game in your head as you're watching the games. What would I say? What would I do? I thought Tirico sucked there. I would not have said that. No, I'm serious. Like, I would not have said that. And so the next time you're in that situation, you're better. You should be better than us. Every time there's an example, you can be one notch better. So, like, it's such an odd business because there is no metric. I'll tell you I know we're running late. Quick story. We're walking out of Washington, that lovely stadium, FedEx Field, whatever it is now. Northwest. Is it Northwest?
Northwest Stadium.
Northwest Stadium. It's neither north or west. We're walking out of there. So when Gruden's doing Monday night, I don't know if it's year 2 for John, and we walk by the winning locker room, and somebody came on the road and beat Washington, and John's like, I missed that. There was like this noise of the visiting team just won locker room, which is so cool. It's like a little bit muffled. They're in a small, crowded room, but we won. Oh, great. And then you walk a few steps down, go past the press conference room, and then you go past the home locker room. We see the coach. Hey, coach, sorry, good luck. It's dead silent, and he's miserable. He looked like the cat left. The dog won't talk to him. There's no hot coffee. He's just like, life sucks. And John's like, I miss that too. And he said, that's the difference in what we do now in TV and what you did there. In sports, the scoreboard told you if you won or lost. In our jobs, nobody tells you won or lost, right? If somebody on the internet says you stunk, you were great, on Twitter or X, whatever, you don't know if you won or lost that game, right? So you've got to be comfortable with knowing what your wins are, and you have to define and know that. So that's why I encourage people, get used to listening to yourself, get used to criticizing yourself, and when you hear something you do really well, like, celebrate it. Like, damn it, I crushed that. That's a great call. I'm going to make that my ringtone. So celebrate your victories, because societally we don't do that enough. So when you make a jump on air, in your market, in your broadcast, your college radio broadcast, like, celebrate the hell out of it. Like, play that call 3 or 4 times in your car. Feel good about yourself. So make sure you're doing that in this whole feedback train as well.
Did you do that for Derek Fisher's calls?
Me? No. Nah, I didn't. I'm always afraid they don't screw up the next one. Although I did it with Damian Lillard. I had a series winner for him in Houston, and the Blazers hadn't won a series in quite some time. And I saw Lillard like the next year, and he's like, "Dude, great call." I was like, "That's the only one I was really proud of." That's cool.
Mike Tirico and Chuck Cooperstein, everybody.
Thank you all. Thank you.